Buongiorno a tutti. Welcome everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming here. Thanks also for the organization team for putting all this together. The risotto yesterday was amazing. Thank you. So today we are going to speak about Angular schematics, but let me first quickly introduce myself. So my name is Tomas Trajan. I am a Google developer expert. I write a lot of blogs about Angular, so if you are interested in this topic, which you probably are because you are at the Angular Day, you can check it out. Also, if you are also writing yourself, you may be interested in the medium enhanced stats Chrome extension, which gives you like a better stats, so feel free to check that out too. The slides will be shared after. Besides that, I am like a speaker and co-organizer of Angular Zurich meetup, so if you by any chance come to Switzerland when the stuff is happening, feel free to join us. It's also a very nice community like yours, so you are always welcomed. If some of you are like really new to Angular and are just starting, then there is this Angular NGRX material starter, which I created together with the help of the community, more than 30 contributors on GitHub, which already reached more than 1,500 stars on GitHub and can help you get started. So it shows you like some stuff, how to use custom Angular material teams, how to do state management with NGRX and stuff like this. So it can be a very nice starting point for you if you are new to Angular. Last but not least, if you are on Twitter, you may be interested in a Release Butler, which is a Twitter bot which tweets the changelogs of popular front-end frameworks and libraries like Angular, React, RxJS, TypeScript, and so on. So whenever there is like a new release, the bot tweets basically the changelog, so you get notified. So that's something nice. All right. So first of all, let me ask you, who of you is actually using like Angular schematics in your day-to-day job? Oh, wow, not so many. Okay, so then probably if I ask who of you is actually using their own custom Angular schematics, it will be two, one, two, okay. Interesting, interesting. So do you guys use like Angular CLI when you are developing Angular projects? Okay. So and then when you are creating a component, you write it like by hand, you create like the file and then put there like some template, or you generate it. Well, that's not a question, yes, no. So but you just basically you just create a file. Or okay. So this can be automated with schematics because there are like these schematics provided out of the box. But yeah, let's see how this goes. So what we are going to learn during this presentation, we will try to answer a couple of questions. So one of them is like, what are Angular schematics, which may be very relevant here. And then we'll go also through the benefits of using Angular schematics. And we will show how we can use Angular schematics so we can kind of like automate our workflows and like get this stuff done in the predictable same way. After that, we will show how we can create even our own custom schematics, which can be useful if we are working in a bigger organization with multiple teams, if we have some like internal libraries which is shared by multiple teams, by many developers, or let's say you have your own open source project and you want to get other developers get started like with less friction, so they have to read less documentation and just get stuff done. So this can be very useful if you create your own custom schematics. And then we will show like how we can integrate like these custom schematics into a normal Angular CLI workspace, which we usually use to develop Angular applications. So, and how are we going to learn all this and answer all these questions? Well, with live coding. So yeah, stuff may go wrong. Stuff may go wrong. Yeah, the Wi-Fi is not the best, but luckily I don't need so much. So we will try our best to answer most of these questions which we had. So first of all, let's say, so if we are like on the job and then like there is a new customer project or something, or in an organization we have to create a new project. So usually we start by like using Angular CLI to create a new Angular workspace to start the project. So what we would normally do is like ng new. So this I guess you already saw sometimes, and you can say like some workspace, and it's like minus create application is false. So this is what you could do to create a workspace. I already did that because of the internet reasons, so I don't have to run this. And what you would get is something like this. So you would get a folder with the workspace, and it will be the empty workspace. It will not have any project in it. So the main file is this Angular JSON. As we can see here, that the project's object is empty. So once we have that, we can go into our workspace. And we would like to make it useful, we actually have to create some application. So we would say ngg, which stands for generate, which we are already kind of using schematics, and we would want to create a application. But then, like, we don't remember what are the things which we can actually set up, and we don't want to now Google for the documentation. So we can say like minus help, and it should tell us all the possible options. So for example, we know we want to use SCSS and not CSS and stuff like this. So when we want to actually generate application in our workspace, we can say, for example, so the application will be called like some app, and we skip install because we don't have internet. And we say like the style would be SCSS, and we want routing. And this is like using schematics to generate the application. And as you can see, this schematics accepts some options to customize how it will happen. So let's let this run, and hopefully this will work out. And as we can see, running these schematics created some files in our workspace. So now we see there is actually this project folder, and there is the some app, and it's all the Angular application with the main, with the test setup, with everything. So that's nice. We don't have to like search for some starter, copy it from somewhere. We don't have to search for documentation. And also, if we look into our Angular JSON file, we will see that there now currently in the projects there is already this first project called some app, and it's also set as a default project. Now if we open this configuration, what is interesting here is this schematics part, which already sets like whenever we want to generate a component, it will use SCSS and not CSS, so we don't have to put that minus style and ever again. So that's kind of nice. So let's say in our workspace we have like application, but we also want a library. So let's say ng generate library, some lib, and again skip install, and this will create another project in our workspace. So it's kind of like a monorepo style, which Angular CLI now supports. And if we look into projects, we see now we have some app and we have some lib. And if we look in Angular JSON, we also get some app and some lib. So and now if we want to generate, let's say, a component, what would happen? So we say ng generate C as a component. That's also a nice thing which goes into that topic that we want to be efficient. We want to type a lot, so we don't want to type ng generate component, but ng gc. That's much nicer. And let's call it like some component. And like now where it will be generated, so it will be generated in some app because it is set as the default project. So there is a way how we can say in which project we want to generate stuff, and it's surprisingly the project flag. So if we want to get the component in the library, we can say project some lib. But if we do this, we will see that this component which we generated, if we look at it and make this bigger, we will see that it actually has CSS because the defaults for the some app don't apply for the some lib, which doesn't have these defaults here. So there is also a way to set the whole workspace wide defaults if we take it outside, and we can say here like schematics, and again, like I don't have to remember, I just invoke code completion and it's all there. So that's again like goes together with a topic to be efficient and not needing to read the documentation. And then I say like, okay, for the component, I would like the style to always be SCSS. So that's like very convenient. Okay, so this is basically what Angular Schematics is. It enables you to generate stuff like components, models, modules, services, pipes, and whatever. So you don't have to remember how to do it. You don't have to scaffold your code for yourself. You also get a test stub, which is something which is always nice because nobody likes testing. So the less friction, the better. So this is very nice thing. And yeah, so there are like many schematics provided out of the box from the Angular CLI. There are also many schematics provided by the third-party libraries like Angular Material or like NGRX or something like this. But you could also create your own custom schematics for your open source library, or in an organization. Let's say you have a big organization, some insurance or banking, and you have many projects and many developers, and maybe you have your internal data access library, or you have maybe your internal component framework or internal whatever security library, And then usually the way it's done is you have library, and then you install, and then you have to go to some wiki page, and there are like 20 outdated steps how to actually configure it with your new project. So you kind of try to make this work. Then you have to call your colleague, and then you have to call the colleague from other city, and then maybe in 2 weeks it's finally up and running. So at least that's my experience in the big enterprises in Switzerland. So maybe you know this. So what would be, how nice it would be if you can just like, let's say like ng add my library and all the setup will be automated. So and this can be achieved. Or let's say if you need to generate like some special data access services for your application when you have some like stuff pre-built already, and you can just like ng generate my company data access model or like data access service, and you get all this stuff. Another big advantage of that is that if you do it with the schematics, you can kind of like spread like the best practices in your organization. So if you generate like some custom service also together with the tests, for example, you kind of can show people how to use it, and then they can just like continue from there and extend it with their own functionality. Cool. So I hope you see that there is like some benefits to using custom schematics and that it can help like in a bigger organization. So now the question is how we can actually do the custom schematics. So we will do the new projects next to that workspace, so it will be not in that workspace. So that means we cannot do ng generate because we are not in Angular CLI. But luckily, there is a thing which we can install. So it's called npm install minus globally. You have to install it, and it's called Angular devkit /schematics CLI. And I already pre-installed it again. And this gives you a schematic command in your command line. So let's say like this. So, and the most important and most interesting is this list schematics. So this lists you all the schematics you can execute in the current content. So let's see what is available. So if we say schematics minus list schematics, we will see that this default schematics package, the CLI, comes with two, the blank and the schematic, which actually generates the schematic project. So, and we want to start from scratch. So we'll create a new project with this blank. So that will be schematics blank, and we will call it hello. And again, I will not run this because I pre-generated with the internet. So what we would get is this hello folder, and as you can see, this is basically a normal Node project. So it has package.json, it has dependencies, it has build and test commands, so very similar to any Node project. But what is new is this schematic field here, which points to collection.json, which is kind of like the heart of the schematic project, which contains all the definitions of all the available schematics. So currently, we will have here only this hello, and as you can see, it points to the hello folder, and there is this index file which contains actually the implementation of this custom schematic, and this has two main parts. So as we can see, the wrapper function is kind of like this factory functions, which gives us the schematic, and it accesses options. So that's something nice which we will use later. So it's the similar way when the Angular CLI allows us to say like skip install or style as CSS, so we can implement it for us. And then once we call this factory, it gives us back the rule, and the rule is this thing which actually performs the changes, and the rule accepts the tree and the schematics context. The tree, it's a very interesting thing. So when we are trying to change the files, we actually don't try to change them in the file system immediately, but we kind of have like a virtual representation of all the files. So one of the very big benefits is it becomes very fast, because we don't do any like disk IO, we don't write the files. Another big advantage is that, let's say like you want to do like some change and then something goes wrong, you don't actually have to commit it to file system and like leave it in inconsistent state. So you can decide that you only want to persist your changes to the file system if everything was successful. And the third big advantage is like it simplifies the schematics testing, because it's virtual, it's fast, so you can actually, in your tests, you can generate the whole Angular CLI workspace like in sub-second times and try your schematics as if for real without any complicated setup. We will show that later. So currently, as we can see, we have a schematic which accepts the tree and returns the tree, so basically it does nothing. So let's try to run it. So let's enter the hello project, and now we say schematics, and we want to run the current project, so we say dot, and then there is like this separator to say like which project and which schematic. So the schematic name is hello, And if we do this, it will fail because we haven't built it yet. So let's do that. And this works. So let's now run this again. And we will see that nothing to be done, which is correct because yeah, we just get the tree and we give it back. Okay, so let's make it more convenient for us. Let's introduce a watch script for the build so we don't have to rebuild it manually every time we make a change. And let's it run in the background. Build. All right. So once we have this, we can start actually doing some implementation. So let's make it do something. So we have this tree and we want to like make a changes to this tree. So tree has this method called create, which enables us to create some file in it. So let's call it hello.js. And the content can be very simple, something like console log hello world. All right, let's put semicolons. Let's be nice. Yes, cool. So let's save this, and now we see compilation was successful. So let's try to run this schematics again. Yeah. And as we can see, it says it created the hello file, so that's what we wanted, but actually when we list the contents of the directory, we cannot find the hello file just yet. So the thing is, whenever you run this schematics with a relative path, it kind of puts you into the development mode to prevent any kind of disaster when you like destroy half of your disk or something by overwriting stuff. So you have to actually provide a flag which says dry run as false. And now when we list the directory, we see the hello.js is here, and when we run it, then we will see hello world. So that's cool, that's what we want. Now let's say we want to say hello Angular day. So we have to go into the business of like passing in the options. So let's add here some console log so we see what's happening. So we can say is options, and we'll just log the options which we get. And for now this is enough, and let's show how this works. So we can basically pass anything. So let's say A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, and we can basically, oh yeah, another thing. So when the schematics tries to overwrite the file, it will fail by default. So there is actually this thing called like force flag, which will overwrite it. But this only works in the future when we will use proper templating and doesn't work with the tree. So one thing which we have to do currently is just to delete that file manually. But this will go away later because schematics actually supports like the force flag. So now if you look here, we are passing in options and we get them nicely as objects. So the A is true, B is true, and C is 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of nice. So that enables us also to pass in something like name Angular day. As we can see, we get that, so we can use that. And currently, yeah, it's just like a JavaScript template string, but still. So we can say options name, and this is still like untyped, so it can be anything. We don't have any guarantees. We cannot provide our users any hints yet, but it will work. So if we do this now and run hello.js, we see hello Angular day. Nice. So but again, like the schematics is all about the developer convenience, so we should give them like a hints and like support for help and stuff like this, so they know actually what kind of options are supported. So how can we do that? First we have to introduce two new files, which is a schema.d.ts and a schema.json. And the schema.d.ts we have to export interface schema, and currently we have just one property, and that's the name, which is a string and is mandatory. And then schema.json is a bit longer, so I will copy it and put it in here. So basically, if you look at this, this contains some metadata, so we see that the title of this schematic is hello option schema, and then the description is hello, say hello to someone. And the most important is like the object which lists all the supported properties which we can pass into schematics. So for example, for us this is the name, and it's also required. And we see that this name is of type string, and again there is a nice description. It's the name of the person we want to greet, which we will see when we do it like with --help. So you can give the people nice hints. And this thing here just means we can do minus minus name Angular day, or it can be just Angular day as a positional argument, like the first argument will be taken as a name. So once we have this, last step is to reference it here so that it belongs to this hello schematics. So we have to say schema is .hello / schema JSON. Right. So now, if we try to do this and run it without, or let's say Angular day, and we try to pass in something like wrong, let's say like name 1. And we will see that the schematics input does not validate against the schema which we said that the name is required. So it's kind of nice that it gives us a good hint. So and if we say like just the name, this will work. Or even if we just pass it in like this, it will also work because the positional argument and we are always getting the correct option, and it's also now validated, plus it will give users nice hints when they do minus minus help. So that's kind of nice. Now, a little side note about the testing, which we spoke about earlier, that we have like this virtual tree which enables us to kind of test easily. So how does this look like? So actually there is a small change compared between Angular 7 and Angular 8, which was released like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Maybe you can see even from the back that this is kind of struck through. That means this is deprecated, because this was like running schematics in a synchronous way, and now we need to do this always asynchronously. So let's quickly change that. So it's run schematics async, and that means we have to make the whole function async, and we have to await this, and we have to cast this to promise. So that's like a small change. So what is happening in this test? First of all, we get to hold of our collection because we want to test our local schematics, and then we create like a runner from that collection, and then we try to run a schematic which is called hello, which we just implemented. We don't pass any options, and we try to run it on the empty tree. And then we expect that the tree will have no files in it, which should fail because we are actually generating the files. So let's see what happens. If we run the test, so first of all, it will complain because we have already a mandatory option, but we are not passing any option in. So let's fix that. So in the options, we have to say we have a name, and let's call it Angular day. So that's the first fix. Now the test should run, but still it should fail because we are actually creating a file. As we can see, we are saying that we expect the tree to be empty, but it complains that actually there is one item called hello.js. So let's fix that. And of course, this is like a very basic test setup, but just to see like that it's like provided out of the box. And then of course you can add like more complicated checks, which will check like for the content of the file or anything like this. And as we can see that the test is passing. Now, one more thing, as we said, like actually you can easily in your test, you can scaffold like the whole Angular CLI workspace very fast because it's all virtual. So let me show you how it would look like. So let's copy this and replace our test. So most of the things don't matter. What really matters is that we want to prepare an empty workspace and an empty application before every test is like a test bed. So we have some workspace options. So there's like ng new some workspace, and then we have application name bar. So there's like ng generate application bar, and then we have some default option for our own schematic. So we know it's a name, which is Angular day, and then again it's the same. We get the collection, we get the runner. And before every test, we create the whole workspace with the workspace option by running external schematics, which is this schematics / Angular, which is actually this collection which has component application library, the default one, which is used in the Angular CLI. And then we created application in that workspace. So before every test, basically we recreate the whole Angular CLI setup in like sub-second speeds, and then we can actually do the test. And here we're just checking if the tree of files contains the file which we generated. So let's try this out. And this should pass again. Cool. So and last thing I want to show you is that actually this tree now really contains all these files which were generated, like the whole workspace. So instead of saying includes, we'll just say it's an empty array, which will of course fail, but will print us all the files which we created into that tree. Exactly. So as we can see, the tree now contains all these files, so it means like it really has this virtual Angular workspace in it. So when you are doing the tests, you can be really sure that it will behave the same as when you're doing it for real. So it's very, very convenient to develop. All right. So that's one thing. Now, until now we were just doing like this kind of like very low level, like okay, let's use the tree and create there a file, but there is actually a better way, and schematics comes with like a very nice templating support which we'll use now. So to do that, we have to create here a new folder called files. And you might be asking yourself why files and why not templates, because we are putting templates in it. So I spent maybe like an hour when I was first debugging it. So the thing is, our templates will be like TypeScript files, but they will be broken because this is some special template syntax, and they cannot be part of the TypeScript compilation. So it has to be called files because the tsconfig JSON has here exclude files so that they don't become the part of the project. So if you want to put in another folder, don't forget to change it also here. So now as for the templating, so usually when we do like in Angular and we generate the component, which ng generate component, it ends up in its folder, and then inside of that folder we will have like a TypeScript and CSS and so on. So we want to generate a hello component of some name, and we want to put it in the hello folder. And now what's interesting is like there is like we want to use the name variable, so we have to say underscore underscore name to access that name variable which we have available. And of course name can have a space in it, but it's like a folder, so we want to do it like with a minus in between and so on. So there is this helper function called dasherize and underscore underscore to like finish the template the variable access. And inside of that folder we want to then have like a file which will again be hello minus underscore underscore name at dasherize underscore underscore dot component dot ts. Okay, we have it. Now it's an Angular component, so let's put some basic setup here. So we know we have to import component from Angular/core, and we know we need to use this component decorator, and we need a selector which has to be like hello. And now again we have to like hello AngularDay or something what the name is, so we have to use the variable, and the syntax for that looks like this. So this helps us to print the variable which we are passing into schematic, but again it's a selector, so we cannot have a spaces in it, so we have to use the helper. And here it's kind of used like a normal function. After that we need a template, inline template, and that can be just something like h1, that can be hello and name, and this has nothing to do with schematics, that's like a normal Angular binding. And now we need the component itself. And it will be hello, and now again we want to do like a hello Angular day, so we have to print it. And now the helper will be called classify because we want the camel case, and we use the name variable component, and inside of it we will have a name property which will be a string, and in that string we will just print the name variable as is. So if it's some space here, so that's what we want. Alright, so this looks kind of good. So we have our template, but we are not using it yet. So what can we do to use this template in our schematics? So we no longer need the tree, this can go away. So first thing we have to do is to get like the hold of the template. So we say source template, and that's like URL function. And again, like, yeah, from where? Probably from schematics. And we see we need a URL, so that's the files folder. And then we need to apply like these options onto that template. So we need to get a parameterized template, source template parameterized. And I call it source because that's what the Angular schematics is doing. And there is this apply function again from the Angular dev kit schematics, and we see it accepts the source, and we already have a source, we have the template. So it's the source template, and it needs a list of rules, and the rule to apply the options to a template is called template from the schematics, and what it accepts is the options, and we already kind of have options, which is nice. So we pass them in. And another thing, like we are using like these helpers like dasherize, classify, and so on. So we can get them like from the schematics package. So we can spread that in. It's called strings. And for this, actually, my code completion doesn't work, so I will import it by hand. So it's from Angular DevKit core, and it's called strings. So it's an object which has in it the functions like dashRice, classify, and snakeify, and whatsoever. So this is what we use in the template, and then we have this parameterized template, but we still have to apply it to our tree to actually make the change. So what we have to do is called merge with, and we have to pass the source in. So we have source parameterized template already, and now when we have a look here, it returns a rule, and this also returns a rule. So, and we know that the rule can be called with tree and context. So let's do just that. Let's call it with the tree and the context. All right. Now seems to be compiled. That's nice. So let's try to run it. And now, okay, so one more thing. So we still have here this hello.js. So let's delete that for one last time. And from now on, we don't have to delete files for ourselves because we are using the real template, so we actually can use the force flag. So that will be much nicer. We are getting to the real deal. So let's get this away, and let's try to generate this. So as we can see, now it was created in a folder, and the file that the names are parameterized. So it's here is hello Angular day. So the name which was passed is correctly changed into the dash form. And then also in the component, we see that the selector is done properly with the dashes, and the class also looks kind of appropriate, but the name was unchanged to just bind it when we want to bind it into the template. So that's something nice. Now, if we try to run this again, of course, it will complain that this already exists, so we can use this force flag to make this happen. Alright, so that's nice, but we are still kind of running it only in our custom schematics project, and we want to actually use it for real in a real Angular project, that means in the Angular CLI. So let's try to do that. We are in the workspace, and we want to, because we are in the workspace, we can do ng generate instead of like schematics because it's available, so we can say ng generate, and then we have to put a relative path to our collection JSON file, and we want to run the hello schematics. And the name will be Angular day, and again we are in the development mode because it's a relative path, so we have to say dry run is false. And let's try if this, and we can also put force, and let's see what happens. Okay, it worked. So that means now we are generating the component already in our Angular project, which is nice, but as we can see, it's kind of in the root of the workspace, which doesn't make much sense because we actually do have some applications here, and the component has to belong to some application. So how can we fix that? So we have to add some other stuff. So first of all, we have to get hold of the workspace configuration. So we have to read it from the tree. Tree enables us not only to create file, but also to read files. So we can say const workspace as buffer. It will give us buffer, and it's a tree read, and we want to read basically this Angular JSON file. And then of course, if we are not in a Angular CLI project, that's kind of a problem. So we say if it doesn't exist, then please throw new schematics exception. So it's again like we want to be very like transparent and give nice hints if something goes wrong. So not an Angular CLI workspace. So now we are sure we actually have a workspace. Then we have to get this workspace as a real JavaScript object so we can access this property. So we say const workspace is JSON parse workspace buffer to string. All right. So now we have a workspace. So basically, just to remember, that's this basically Angular JSON file. So we are interested, let's say, in the default project and then the project itself. So that means we need to get a const project name. For now, will be a workspace default project, and then the project itself will be workspace projects project name. So now we have a project, so we can use the project to get a path. Thank you. So the path is yeah, what was it? So we know that the project has source root and the project type. So that means the path is project source root slash now project how is it called, project type. And if project type is application, then we know that this is app, else is lib. Well, that has to be a question mark. So once we have this, we still have to use a helper which comes like from this default Angular CLI stuff, so we can use a function called parse name, and this accepts the path and the name which we have, and this gives us const parsed. And once we have this, we have to reassign the name is now parsed name, and we have to also add another rule. We need to move the file to the final destination, and that will be the parsed path. So let's try this out, if this works. So the compilation is good. So now if we run this again, it should generate inside of a sum app, which is the default project. So let's have a look. So in project sum app source app, as we can see, here is this hello Angular day. So that's exactly what we wanted. Now, also it supports, maybe if you used Angular CLI, you know, you can say something like this. You can say like features slash conferences slash Angular day, and this should create all the nested structure. And this should happen now because we are using this parsed name. So let's see. All right. And now we see the whole structure was actually created for us. So this is like a very powerful, and we just get it like with this one function out of the box. So that's pretty nice. So now we still have like some minutes. So the last thing would be, now it's always generated in that default project, but let's say we have multiple projects. So how can we add support for that? So we have to add a new flag into our options so we can pass in also the project. So that means in the schema we have to say there can be potentially project, which is optional string, and also in the schema JSON we have to say that we could have in theory also project property, which type is it good? Yeah, type will be string, and the description will be the project where we want to generate. All right, so we have this looks all right, and then we have to use it here, not here. So we were saying that project is the default project, but now we will say that project name could be either default project, but if we have options project, then let's use that one. And we actually forgot to add here the typings, which we could have, but doesn't really matter now. All right. So we have this. So let's say we try to do the same, but now we say project, and it's called some lib. Some lib. Good. So now if you look into our workspace, we pass the project name. So you'll see that currently it was created into the some lib project as we wanted, so that the path gets adjusted. So it's pretty powerful, and it's pretty easy to make it like work with a proper Angular CLI with multiple project, monorepo, or just single project, and like this. And okay, like the template which we did right now was like a very basic thing, because yeah, it's just like a component, but this can be literally everything. And you can make there even like stuff like conditional statements, you can make there stuff like loops. So any kind of service or entity you would like to generate, it's possible. Also, because all these schematics kinda are just the rules, it's also possible to kinda chain them together. So you can make like prepare some like smaller parts, and then you can even let your colleagues generate like the whole feature, which will create a module, components with navigation and the data access, and this can be all chained together in a one command. So they just say ng generate my company feature, and this will work. Okay, like the complete last thing, which goes into the direction of convenience. So we give them a nice error that like, okay, you didn't provide the required property. But actually, what we can do is be even more user-friendly and say x prompt, which will basically ask them what is the name of the person we want to greet. And if we do this and run our schematics actually without any option, which is necessary, which is required, we will see that the schematics actually asks us. And you can put as many questions as you want. So like for the setup of Angular material, that's pretty common. You can also make like a yes-no question, which you can just select with the mouse. You can make a question which is like a choosing from the list. I cannot show it because internet, but if you try to ng add like Angular material, it will ask you like 4 questions and you can choose which team you want and stuff like this. So let's for the final say Angular day. Oh, okay. Anyway, wrote it probably with the wrong. Yeah, I should have not put the quotes. Anyway, so I think our time is running out. So let's wrap this up. So what did we learn today? We showed like how we can create the Angular workspace, like a CLI workspace, and how we can create like the applications in it and the libraries. We didn't show how we can use third-party schematics, but feel free to catch up in the hall later, and I will show you. Didn't have time. And we spoke about the potential use cases for the Angular schematic, so it's kind of like automation and spreading of the best practice and stuff like this. Then we show how we can specify the project-wide and repo-wide defaults to make it even more convenient, and how to execute the schematics for a specific project with -- project flag. After that, we show that there is actually also a dedicated schematic CLI, so not just the ng generate, but the schematics itself, which can generate as a schematic project. And we show how we can run these custom schematics like for the development and how to test them and so on. We spoke about the concepts like the rule, tree, and options, which helps us to get the things done in the schematics, and we implemented like a simple schematics. After that, we show how we can use the built-in template support like with the helper functions to get it even like more powerful, and show how we can pass in the schematics options. After that, we made it work like in the context of the Angular CLI workspace, and show that we actually can even ask users like with these X prompts to provide us input for the required properties to be even more user friendly. Anyway, so that's it. As for the resources, so like there are pretty much great resources on the official Angular IO website about the CLI, and there is pretty recent addition. The official schematic docs was added maybe like last month, so there was like long-standing PR, and it was added. It has maybe like 3 or 4 articles in it about like how to do the schematics, and then it goes even more in depth, for which we didn't have time, like stuff like ng add, which enables you to automate the setup of the library, or ng update, which enables you to like automate like the migrations. Then if you want to check like how it's used in practice, I have a small open source library which is called Angular extension model, which generates like a module services, which also has ng add and like generates these module services, which is maybe easier to get started because the ones from Angular CLI, they are just so huge and there is so much happening, so it can be confusing. So this is like a much smaller example. Besides that, I wrote like a productivity tips blog post about the schematics and an in-depth guide to custom schematics, which is basically what we spoke about today, but more. So I hope like the slides will be shared so then you can check it out. So feel free to install me if you have a good console. You get like links, and if you have a good console, you can probably even like click on them and it will open a website. So like the Twitter, Medium, and so on. So install me at mpx Tomas Trajan. So it's like the nice way to get in contact. And yeah, if like I'm based in Switzerland, so if you are interested like in the workshops for your organization, then yeah, feel free to get in touch and we can make something happen. And thank you for your attention.